Hello, good morning. Happy Monday. It is Hannah Crum here, the Kombucha Mama. I hope you had a good weekend. I am very excited for today's guest. Good morning, friends. Bienvenidos. Mucho gusto verles. Gracias por venir. ¿Cómo fue tu fin de semana? El mío fue muy bien. I had a nice weekend. Did a little thrift store shopping with some friends, went to a clothing swap. This is a new clothing swap top, new to me. I always love, we love getting together on a quarterly basis and trading fashion. It's really fun. And it's sustainable because it helps to reduce the amount of clothing we're purchasing, and it gives new life to other clothes. Did any of you do clothing swaps or thrift store shopping? I grew up with it and I really love it. But today's guest is someone who I really love. Oh, hello from Jamaica. Hi, Nettie's Farm. I also was able to go out to eat with a friend. That was really nice. It just, it's nice that as we're getting back to a safer space that we can engage with the public again. How are you guys feeling about that? Does that make you nervous? Are you excited to be out in public? I'm an extrovert, in case you couldn't tell. And yay, I love to hear people are enjoying thrifting. Yes, Diana, I do too. I really love it. I just have a passion for it. Growing up in Chicago, we just had like these really great thrift stores. And of course you had your vintage, which was a little more pricey, but you could get so many deals. But here in LA, thrifting's a little more expensive. Yes, both nervous and excited. Exactly right. Hello.
Hi,
Good to see you, friend.
you too.
Oh my gosh, I love your background. Are you in your garden?
I am. I usually enjoy a nice cup in the garden, so in the mornings.
I've got my cup of Sip Herbals right here. Excited to be telling everybody all about it.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here. Thanks for having me. Of course, my puppies are like, who are we talking to? Who are we talking to? So they're like, right here.
Well, if there's a surprise visit, I guess we won't be that surprised.
Yeah, I didn't think you would. Okay, Taco. Of course, Taco and Taco's poking me. He's like, well, you've met Taco, so you know.
Yes, Taco, talk about Taco. He needs all the talking about him.
It's all of it. You can't talk to anybody but him.
Well, we have known each other, gosh, how long has it been? So we first met at AHS,
Yeah.
Ancestral Health Symposium, the one up in Berkeley. I'm just totally blanking on what year it was.
I think it was, that had to be 2016.
2016, 2015, something around then. Yeah, exactly. And I went to the Ancestral Health Symposium because I saw that there were some really great talks about gut health and the microbiome, and I was really eager to connect with Grace Leo, the gut goddess. And just, of course, at that time I was very into sort of the traditional foods through Weston A. Price, and that had sort of expanded into paleo and, better understanding all these different types of dietaries, keto and things like that. And so there were a lot of great speakers there, but from that more scientific perspective, which is what I really enjoyed about the conference. Why were you at AHS?
So, of course, I'm all into, I started with the paleo path, and then I met so many great people. And like you were saying, I'm an extrovert, right? I'm like, hey, I want to talk to all the people. So I went to AHS just to talk to the people. I didn't go. I just wanted to hang out with people who were like-minded and go to all the events and have some fun and meet some new people. And that's where I met you, right?
And I was so grateful because you gave me a ride back from Berkeley to LA. So it was just really lovely. We got to spend several hours with your friend and just really got to know each other and solidified our friendship in those moments. It was so much fun.
Yeah,
And
totally.
in fact, you're gonna be speaking at AHS coming up here. When is that happening?
Yeah, that's later on in the summer. It's August, just like usual, but it's here in LA, so that'll be really cool. And I'll be talking more about basically creating an ancestral diet for you specifically. So, for instance, my ancestors are not the same as your ancestors, and so we would require different foods, right? Because obviously we have different backgrounds. And so how I changed from so strict, dogmatic, paleo, can't have this, can't have that, because it was really hurting my health, to, okay, let me figure out what works for me, that my ancestors ate, and stop, trying to be so dogmatic and so much into the what he said, what this guru said, then, to do what works for me.
And I love that. We call that here trust your gut philosophy, because what I do for me may not be right for you. And we all need to really listen, tune in to what our bodies needs. And sometimes we're confused as to where to start with that. And that's where, starting with any of sort of the extreme diets that ask you to get rid of a lot of things. So, veganism, vegetarianism, paleo, keto, like any of those can have an initial really beneficial effect, because a lot of them are asking you to get off of processed foods. And when you realize how badly processed foods are impacting your health, from there, I do feel like being so narrow and strict isn't necessarily the best for everybody all the time. And really, I want to talk to you first about, you have a background in biology, and just sort of, I love where you're going with this concept of really listening into what your body needs, because I think, we think caveman, but who is that caveman and where was that caveman based? And if most of the people have that European ancestry, of course, that may not match up with folks who have different types of ancestry like your own. I just would love for you to share a little bit more about how you came to discover all those things.
Yeah, so, we're all biologically individual, down to our fingerprints, right? So there's no way that what works for me exactly is going to work for you exactly. And so I think we got so caught up in, oh my gosh, I just want to look good naked. That was the whole thing for a while. Remember, it was like, look good naked, it's like, yeah, I want to do that, right? Who's going to say no to that? But then it's like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. I don't feel good. I had to tap into what was making me, how I was feeling, how I was sleeping. What was my skin looking like? What was my digestion like? How was my mental health through this whole thing? Because being so dogmatic about, oh, can't eat this. I'm going to take my own Tupperware over here. I'm not going to go to this social event. And for me being really social, that was very harmful for my mental health. And so I had to tap back into all of it and go, yeah, that ain't working. I did a 23andMe. I wanted to see exactly what my ancestry was, and so I could research. So I researched based on my DNA, and I wanted to see, okay, did my ancestors eat grains? What if they ate meat? What kind of meat? Was it fish? Was it poultry? What was it, right? And so what I discovered was that my ancestors did eat a very vegetable, plant-based forward. They ate a very plant-forward diet. Complete with grains and a lot of fish. And it's exactly why I crave a lot of fish, right? I love fish. I eat fish every day. And why I love, and it wasn't just, oh, we're going to eat all this processed grain. It was more like, what grain? So I learned about fonio, and I learned about different types of vegetables that my ancestors ate, which I obviously can't get a lot of them here, but I can mimic that diet. And I realized that I feel a million times better. I sleep better. My skin looks great. My mental health is better. It's like, oh yeah, I can eat that. That is part of my heritage. And so I have a good time eating now. I enjoy a lot more of my life when I was so strict. And like you were saying, it's a good place to start, right? It's a really good place to start for a lot of people. It's not that great. We grow, we change. So it may not be the best place to stay.
Right. Well, and I talk about that with kombucha. Like, kombucha isn't the end. Kombucha is the beginning. Kombucha is a doorway. It's a gateway into other fermented foods and drinks, into making healthier lifestyle choices. But if you're going to use kombucha like a drug or like a miracle cure, you're going to be very disappointed, because while it can have an immediate benefit for certain symptoms or ailments, to get really to that root cause, we're diverse human beings. We are evolved to consume a diverse range of foods and products, and that's what's really important. And so obviously you're really passionate about food, and many of your businesses have centered around food. And yes, I say businesses because you are a fempreneur extraordinaire with many, many businesses. So let's first talk about 20 dishes and sort of how you came into that, and that'll lead us, of course, to Sip Herbals.
Totally. Those 20 dishes started because, again, I was very like paleo, 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 paleo. And if you are coming from a standard American diet where you just run through the drive-through, you go grab whatever, and you feed yourself, which is totally fine if that's where you're at. It wasn't working for me. But what's also not working for me was trying to cook every meal from scratch. And again, I was so like, this is all I can eat. I wanted my kids to eat that way. I was working on my master's degree. I was working full time. And I was like, I'm going to go nuts. And so I created 20 dishes because I had a background in databases. And I knew that using queries to pull specific instructions that could be done ahead of time. Like I knew you could chop onions ahead of time. I knew you could chop your vegetables ahead of time. You can prep your meat ahead of time. You can make these marinades. So I was like, okay, let me take these specific instructions, put them in the database, and every recipe that has those instructions will automatically create a prep list for me. And so I had it where it creates, you create your meal plan, it creates your shopping list, but also your prep guide. And it saved my life and my sanity because I was like, this is so much easier, right? I already know what I'm going to have. I already know that it's halfway prepared. And so I go in the kitchen 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, I have a dinner. And so other friends were like, man, that would be really cool if I could use it. And so I was like, thing, right? And so I put it online, and then Kelly and I, Kelly, my business partner, she really helped with the recipes because she's a great cookbook author. And so she promoted it, we promoted it, and it grew, right? And then we were like, okay, cool. Now what, right? Because I'm that kind of person. I'm like, I got to do something. So we grew it, and then we have been thinking we wanted a physical product. Now, I have not. Every time I would try to drink bulletproof coffee, I would get sick. Like, my digestion did not like coffee, right? So I would keep trying to drink it because it's healthy. It's healthy. They're saying it's healthy, right? Keep trying to drink bulletproof coffee, and not only did it screw up my digestion royally, but I also started noticing anxiety issues for me from the caffeine. And do it, right? It's so healthy. And then Kelly was like, yeah, no, dude, I can't drink coffee. And I was like, she's like, we should really look at how we can make something that we can actually enjoy. In the morning, your ritual, your routine involves getting up and, like right now, coming outside, enjoying something warm, getting some fresh air, and it's usually coffee. Well, for me, that didn't work. So we came up with Sip because we started researching, okay, what is a good alternative? And I love New Orleans, so I knew chicory was going to be in there. I was like, yep, chicory. But what else, right? So chicory and carob and dandelion for liver support. And carob has all those really great minerals like calcium, potassium. It's really good for you. And then I knew chicory had that flavor, but it also has inulin, which is good for your gut too, right? And so we started tinkering, and months and months and months. And then we were like, oh, this tastes good. Let's do a Kickstarter. Let's see if other people are really interested. And that Kickstarter funded 144%. And yeah, I know, right? And then Sip was born. And now we've expanded to 4 new flavors, well, original, and then 3 new flavors. And because, again, we wanted to have that coffee experience without the side effects. Like, we wanted all those coffee feels without the coffee flaws. so
Right
that,
there with you.
yeah, I just do it.
Well, and so just quickly back to 20 dishes. So that's a subscription program. Anybody can still sign up and get access to all these great recipes. And really the concept is making 20 dishes in 20 minutes. Am I right about that?
Well, 20 dishes is because I was like, okay, I got to get weeknight meals, right? There's 4 of us, 5 nights a week, 20 dishes, done, right? And so that's where that came from. But it really only takes 20 minutes. And you can, as my diet evolved, I needed to make sure that it would grow too. So there's recipes in there that are low FODMAP. There are recipes in there that are AIP. There are recipes in there that are keto. There are recipes that are paleo. There are just plain old recipes that tasted really good. So they were in there. Right? So it's like, let's put it all in there. Let's let people be able to like curate their own meal plan. If you don't like nuts, but you can have dairy, you don't need to be AIP. You can just say no nuts. If you don't like dairy, if you like dairy but can't do other things, you can say no dairy, and make it to where you can grow with it. It grows with you. It's adapting to you instead of the other way around where you're trying to fit into this little square and it's like, that's not, what if you're not a square? What if you're not even a circle, you're an oval? So
What if you're just not square that day?
right. And what if you're oblong the next day and maybe a pentagram? So it's like, that is why we made it that way, is because we all grow, we all change, we all evolve. And so assigning something specific to someone that says you're going to be this way forever is not real. And if somebody tells you, oh, you should be this way, that's not okay either. You are you, and it's perfectly fine. Get something that will fit you, right?
Yeah, exactly right. And so that's great that the tool is so customizable, and especially with all these different food sensitivities you've mentioned, again, every body is different. Trust your gut and trust my gut are two totally different things. And so they would just go to 20dishes.com to learn more about that product, right?
You just head on over there. There's even a free trial. So if they're like, I just want to see what it's like, I want all, and it's not like, oh, limited, you get 8 recipes. It's like, here, take the whole thing. Because you can't, it used to drive me nuts when you would get like a free trial and then you go do something that you really wanted to do and it's like, nah, you got to pay for that. It's like, well, this isn't a trial, right? Right.
Yes.
Oh, so we wanted to make sure that if someone wants to try it out fully and completely, go for it, right? Just check it out.
That's great. Well, okay, so building on that, you're continuing to serve the needs of people who have different sensitivities. And I love that you mentioned the no coffee thing. I love coffee, and coffee also, when I overconsume it, becomes a crutch. I end up with more of that adrenal fatigue. I end up more in a cycle of it doesn't really support my body as well. I also love kombucha, of course. And so we are going to be doing a 30-day kombucha challenge where we're asking people to swap their soda, their energy drink, etc., for kombucha.
That's how by the way, that is exactly how I started brewing my own, is because I was like, I got to get off this soda. Like, and it's not like I was drinking a lot, but it was like you just crave that fizzy, you wanted it, right? So that's exactly how I started on kombucha and ended up with the 5-gallon brewer thing. Loves it. Like if she could drink it morning, noon, and night, she would drink it morning, noon, and night.
And kombucha is great for that, but then there are those moments when I want that other type of flavor profile. I want something that has a little bitterness that I can still put my, whatever. I'm all about the cream with my coffee, I have to admit, although I'm using more non-dairy options, but still I want that little like creamy treat. And even if it doesn't give me that, energy pick me up, like that ride that you go on with the caffeine, there's, like you said, the ritual of it, the enjoyment of it. And I know I'm not going to pay the price later. So I can even enjoy it at 3 p.m. and it's not going to be something at 10. I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? And it's something that's going to, like you said, not only taste delicious, but have all these other health benefits with it. So like you were saying, the inulin, which is a prebiotic, and so that goes in and that actually helps the microbes have food to eat. So once you get good bugs in there, they still need to eat something. And so putting stuff like inulin, I think even chicory might have some prebiotic benefits as well. But I didn't realize carob had so many of those other minerals. I think minerals is something, it's kind of a missing piece, because what we don't realize is that we're batteries, right?
Yep.
And we need minerals to conduct electricity because we are generating electricity. And for so long, there's been this drum of, low salt, low salt, low salt. And I always say, consider the source. Where are we talking about iodized salt that sits in piles next to the highway in Chicago and gets, crud rained down on it from all the traffic? Like, yeah, maybe you don't want that. But when it comes to Himalayan salt or, Celtic sea salt, and then there's more than salt, right? Because sodium is not the only mineral that we need. We need the potassium, the magnesium, I started supplementing with magnesium, and it's completely transformed my stress levels and different things. And I honestly think for the kombucha makers out there, there's a way to incorporate minerals into your booch where it's going to give it a lightly softer flavor, but you're also creating more of an electrolyte type beverage that's going to have more hydrating benefits. So Sip Herbals was sort of the brainchild out of that. Now I know you were initially resistant to a Kickstarter, so how did that transform your thought process? Like, what were you worried about? Why did you decide to do it, and how did that ultimately benefit Sip Herbals?
So I'm the kind of person that does not like uncertainty. I don't like it. Like, it's just not my jam. Now, mind you, I'm an entrepreneur, so you gotta have a lot of uncertainty in that world, right? But I was like, well, I would rather just do like a pre-sale and do it that way, but I just didn't want to do it. And so Kelly was like, look, we need to do this Kickstarter because it will get more eyes on it. It will expose it to a different audience. We just need to do it this way. And I'm like, okay, kicking and screaming, right? But then in my head, it's like, look, you got to be open to being wrong. As an entrepreneur, you must be open to being wrong. Got to. Because if not, you won't succeed. You just won't. We don't know everything. No one knows everything.
Fail forward, as they say. We're going to fail. That's a given. But can we then learn a lesson out of that? Can we take an opportunity out of that as opposed to having it slide us into that depression area? I mean, you'll still go through a little bit of that, but then you got to pick yourself up and move forward.
And that's what happened is I was like, look, if this doesn't work, then it shows that it wasn't something that we should have gone down anyway, right? And if it does work, then it's like, hey, people really want this. It's proving the concept. And it's funny because we were considering doing another Kickstarter here coming up because we're like, okay, we need this new product, which is really cool. And then we're like, in my head, it started going, no, don't do that. That's uncertainty. And it's like, okay, what happened last time? What did we learn? And that is what I use in my entrepreneur journey. It's not a failure. It's exploring the contrast, right? There's the contrast. There's what you want and what you don't want. We're going to explore the contrast between the two. And if it's something that I don't want, then it's like, what do I do next time to not get this? And so it's not a terrible thing. It's exploring contrast. When you say...
Well, and I just want to pause on that concept real quick because I think, we're so black and white, this side or that side. We've become so incredibly divided in how we express ourselves about things, and social media hasn't exactly helped that because there's a lack of nuance. I mean, I think there's some newer things coming out like Clubhouse where you just hear people talk, and there's so much more information you get when you hear things as opposed to just a written word. But back to your point of contrast, like instead of thinking right, wrong, good, bad, the duality of it, it's just like, okay, so over here, I'm getting some sort of contrast, or static or feedback or however you want to frame that. But it doesn't necessarily, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it isn't exactly what you're desiring, it doesn't mean it's bad. But by exploring that contrast, you then can figure out, well, maybe I want to shift in a different direction. Am I articulating that well, or would you add anything else to how you think of it?
No, that's totally it, because we've been brought up to believe that if it's not completely right or completely wrong, then you failed. And you failed, right? All the way through school. Like grade school all the way through, you pass or fail. There is no, oh, you did a really good job, or maybe you're good at something else, and it's, no, you failed. And so we're like, oh my God, failing is the worst. And so I had to train myself to go, all right, it's not failure, it's exploring contrasts. It's maybe I like this piece and this fits, and let's put those together. And oh, look, that's what I wanted, right? Instead of, oh, that was bad, and I'm afraid to do that. And it stops you dead in your tracks. Like dead in your tracks when you're like, no, I don't want to fail. No, I don't want to fall. No, I don't want to disappoint. Disappoint who? Right? Who is this perfect person that's like, I've never made a mistake? No one, right? We all have to do that in order to learn. When you're learning to walk, you don't stop because you failed the first time. You get back up and you try again. Right. Same. And your parents encourage it. They're like, oh, oopsie, get on up. If we did that to ourselves, if we were like, oopsie, get on up, then it would definitely help us to be in a better place. Not just entrepreneurially, but I think in life. to go, oopsie, oops, oh, look at the baby, get on up, you know, and help ourselves to actually fail forward, like you said.
Well, and that's like even when we go to fermentation, right? Like there are so many factors that aren't necessarily under our control, and you might find mold one day, or you might, this flavor was amazing, this flavor was terrible, this bottle tasted great, this batch was no good, right? But it's the cumulative experience. It's what you take out of the information you get from that, and how you puzzle piece it moving forward. And so I think there's a lot of value in that. So I'm glad you took Kelly pushed you to do the Kickstarter, because it also validated the proof of concept. It gave you the funds you needed to launch it and to make it really beautiful. I mean, your packaging is amazing. Your site is gorgeous, and and the flavors are really delicious as well. I've also, sneaky tip, you can actually pour more water over one serving and get another glass out of it. Obviously, it loses its potency over time, but I don't know if that's a secret you've told everybody.
I just tell people they can reuse the grounds. Like mine are right here in there. You can totally reuse those. Is it going to be as strong if you let it brew long enough? Yeah, totally. Right. You just have to let it go longer. No worries. I'm not like, oh my gosh, don't tell anybody that, because I want them to buy more. They're going to buy more because it's good. Right.
Yes.
Delicious. It's not like, that's going to deter people forever. It's just like, if you want to stretch it, go for it. I've totally, like, if you're totally talking to the budgetnista, right? I was like, how can I get more out of that? Right. So that's not bad at all. Totally rebrew it. Just let it steep longer. And if you are brewing it the first time, and you like a lighter brew, then the second time will give you a lighter brew anyway. So no big deal there. Just totally do that. I like a stronger brew, so I let mine go for hours, or actually minutes, not hours.
Minutes, well, hours if you forget about it. Like I'll let it just sit in the pot and come back and grab it later, and yeah.
I've totally done that too, but not today.
Today it's nice and fresh. Well, as we've heard, you were essentially a serial entrepreneur. What was the driving force of doing that? Why didn't you go the sort of job route, or maybe you did? What shifted you onto this path of entrepreneurship?
I'm not the best employee. I'm strong. I'm very social. I'm very, this is right, and what you're doing is not okay. And I'm the one who's going to say it. And that doesn't work well in corporate America. I didn't know they frowned upon that. So
Why, you're not fitting into the cookie cutter mold?
Whoops, right? And I tried really hard, and I had a really great job. And I was like, I'm going to do this. And I saw some people doing things that were not okay. And I called them on it. I took it up the ladder. I went to ethics. I ultimately said, they're not going to do anything about this. They really don't care. They don't care about the people. They don't care about anybody other than that last dollar, this particular company. And it wasn't just that company. I had seen glimpses of it everywhere that I had worked. And my son was in second grade. He's now in 10th grade. So he's in second grade, and I have a master's in education. And I was like, and he wasn't thriving in public school. He just was not. He hated it. He was bored to death. And I was like, maybe it's time we just homeschool him. And I presented the idea to my husband, who initially was not on board. But, he's like, well, you have a master's in education. You have a teaching credential. I guess we can give it a try. So we gave it a try, and I was like, I'm bored. I got to do something too. I have to do something else. And so I started to look at different avenues and different ventures, and I tried different things, and they didn't work. I tried, it wasn't successful for me. It's successful for other people, just didn't work for me. And then that's when I met Kelly in an online group. We were in a foodie group, and I was on my paleo path, and she had this really beautiful cookbook called Paleo Eats. And I was like, dude, that food looks so good. Like it's like treats and all the stuff that certain very strict paleo people tell you, oh, that's just sex with your pants on, all these treats. And I was like, I don't care. It looks good. I want those tortillas. I want all of that in my life right now. So I met with Kelly and we hung out and we were online, of course. And then we were like, let's do this thing. And that's how 20 Dishes was born, because we were both like, oh, this would be cool. And that's how that started. Even though the other paths, like I said, didn't work out. They showed me contrast. That's not what I want. This is what I want. Um, that's how we ended up with 20 Dishes. And that's how we ended up with all of the other avenues that we've gone down. And that's how we ended up with SIP, is because we were like, yeah, this corporate thing ain't working. I need to be a mom at home. And that, you know, a lot of them are coming around now, but 10 years ago, that was not the case of, oh, let's accommodate for this working mother of little people. Like my son, like I said, was second grade. My daughter was in kinder. Um, and I was like, this just isn't working. It's not, I can't do this. And I can't stand around and watch people be harmed by this corporate machine and not say about it. And they're like, yeah, you got to shut up. That's not going to work. You know? And it didn't work because I said something every time and got in trouble.
Which is unfortunate because they should be in the contrast and understand that clearly their policies weren't benefiting all of their people. But we all know large systems don't change as easily as smaller ones do. And I love hearing about your passion. But I also, what I hear is that it's helpful to have a partner in this with you. You know, I'm a small business owner, and honestly, I could not have built my business without my husband. I was so grateful to have his support, his labor, his insight, you know, his ability to do things differently than I do them. And that's really, this is a labor of love, emphasis on the labor, but it's a partnership. And so whether that partner ends up being, you know, your husband or someone you're related to, or a friend, like I think, you know, it's so valuable to have other people in your community who you can be creative with. You know, do you guys, obviously you're good at the contrast, but do you guys ever get into disagreements, or, you know, how do you sort of manage that partnership and still be friends?
So I am the baby of my family, and Kelly is the oldest of her family, which totally works, right? I'm the baby. I'm going to do whatever. Like, I'm just like, whoa, whatever. I'm the baby, right? A totally different mindset from the baby than the oldest. The oldest is like, yeah,
do this, do that, boss, boss, boss.
Right? And the baby's like, okay, no worries. As long as I don't get in trouble for it, I'm cool, right? I'll just do it. So I am the baby of the family. I'm so used to being bossed around, right? And not like she's bossy, but she is very like, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, this needs to be done. And as the baby, I'm like, oh, let's think outside the box. Let's do all these things that are like crazy, sound crazy. And she's like, oh, okay, you know, we can do that, yeah. So it works out when we get into disagreements, when it's like, no, I want to do this, no, I want to do this. Kickstarter is a really great example of that, where she was like, we need to do this Kickstarter. And I'm like, nope, not doing it. And she's like, no, we need to do it. I'm like, no, she is very good at being the big sister of going, okay, fine, I'm gonna give you some time. You'll come around. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And she's like, oh, yeah, you're gonna do it eventually. And I'm very open to being wrong. She's open to being wrong. And that gives us a lot more opportunity to explore possibilities. When you're so closed off, that's really like, you have to know your own personality. If you're the kind of person who can't be wrong, you don't need a partner.
Right.
Because they're going
to be challenging to have a partner, because we're all wrong at some point or another. And if you can't be comfortable or able, and I have not been good at being wrong. And it was challenging to work so much with my husband and then also try to be husband and wife. And, you know, thankfully we're at a point where we can kind of diverge into doing different things. We still work together, but, you know, he's able to go and do things that really meet his passion and purpose. And I'm doing things that meet my passion and purpose. And we continue to intersect on those areas that make sense for us. And that just even that little bit of separation has created so much more ability for us to be husband and wife as opposed to only business partners. And part of that is healthy boundaries. Like, I'm not saying you can't do it. Of course you can, but it's always figuring out, you know, where do you draw those healthy lines? When do you talk about work? When do you talk about personal life? and things like that. And so even with a partner, whether you're, related or married to them or not, you have to be able to engage in that kind of communication. So it sounds like, right, that foundation was really strong with you and Kelly, and you guys are able to create such amazing businesses out of that.
Yeah, and what's really like people think, oh, I have to know this person forever. And like I said, Kelly and I met online, and we had not met for the first time in person until I think we were working on our third project together.
Wow.
And it was like we finally met in person, and we were like, oh, wow, you're in person. Right? And then we meet probably every 6 months to a year. I usually go to Portland because Kelly is not leaving. Which I don't mind because I'm an extrovert. She's an introvert, like complete introvert. And I'm like, yeah, let's go play, right? And she's like, I'm not leaving. So it works out. We have to find what works. You just have to be open. Not so closed to, it has to be this way. I have to have this kind of partner. I have to meet them this way. It has to come through this. It's like, no, you don't. If you're open to possibilities, then you don't ever know how great it can be, because having Kelly as a partner has been the most amazing experience, because she is just like the perfect piece, and we've learned from each other how to communicate, how to set up boundaries. I've learned how to say, no, this isn't what I like, this is what I need. And people can't read your mind. No one can read your mind. Say what you need.
Agreed. Yeah, I think communication is so challenging sometimes as human beings, because I think I was reading an article about this, just like when you're raised with different stuff, like even asking for things, there's like people who ask for them directly, and then there's people who sort of subtly talk about them, but you're supposed to infer that that's the ask. And in some family structures or communication styles, and then you're trying to bring those two together, and if you haven't had the conversation of how it is you actually communicate, that can lead to a lot of challenges. But it's really just being open to keeping that communication flowing, because again, we're always evolving and changing. We're never going to be exactly the same all the time, and that's a blessing. But it's also a challenge.
I tell people, as a biologist, because obviously I love biology, if we were meant to stay the same, we would have remained an egg and a sperm.
We are intended, and I love that you're saying this, because I feel like, I've learned a lot about the microbiome through kombucha, right? Through wanting to understand this symbiosis and how these organisms work together. And I know we've had this theory of selectivity, where it's all about competition and it's cutthroat and survival of the fittest. But I think what we're starting to learn as we look at more of these systems, and as we even understand our ecosystem, is more things are commensal, they're cooperative. And it's not just about, sure, you have to come together to hold a healthy boundary to prevent pathogens, right? That's what the trace amounts of alcohol that the SCOBY creates does, is it kills, it's antimicrobial, so it kills pathogens and things like that. It's the same with the acids being created by that process. But then within that framework, they're creating ways for those organisms that are able to work together to thrive. And how do we continue to shift the way we think about systems and people and communication, so that we aren't creating this sort of confrontational, negative way, but we are continuing to be flexible. Bacteria are open source in the sense that a bacterial cell will rupture, that DNA will become loose into the environment, and another organism can come and scoop that up and use it. Now, unfortunately, that leads to superbugs sometimes when it's going in the direction we don't like, but that same concept, it's like open source software. I really think that humans are bacteriosapiens, and the way that we behave is so much more like bacteria. And the more time we spend learning about them and their behavior, the more we can really understand ourselves and find novel solutions to some of these complex problems, because the organism's already figured it out.
Understand that it's not as complex as we think. Oh, it's so hard. Oh, we have to fight. Not that hard. We don't have to fight. There's more than enough. Like, until there was a little girl who was like, oh, she said, I got upset. I was talking to a girl in a class that I was teaching, and I was asking her why she got upset. She got upset because they were telling another girl that she was really pretty. And I was like, so what, why did that upset you? And she's like, well, they kept saying she was pretty. And I'm like, but that doesn't take your pretty away, right? There's more than enough sunshine for everyone. Just because I'm standing in the sun doesn't mean you can't have any sunshine. And the more that we understand that we can all stand in the sun, the more that we can have the mindset to work together to figure it out, right?
Well, and even those experiments they've done where, you know, you say negative things to a plant or you say positive things to the plant. And I know you've got your own hydroponics, you're growing all kinds of things in your yard, but you know, it's the same about the kombucha. Talk to your cultures, engage with them, have a relationship with them, because they're talking to your bacteria through quorum sensing. And so, I mean, bacteria are everywhere. In my opinion, there are ESP. It's how, you know, we can understand things from people who are so far away, is because we are housing some of their bacteria and they're sending little messages. And so
Energy, right? And physics teaches us that it's all energy. It's all moving. You know, what looks like it's not connected, we're all connected. It's all connected. I don't care if we look different, it doesn't matter. We're still connected.
Right.
All we're
Which means that all of our actions have an impact. And so the more that we become aware of that, and it's not to be like all of a sudden we have to be so nervous, but it's just like understanding that you don't live in a vacuum, you don't live in a silo, and you are more than just the thoughts in your head, and how to then come out into the world and see from the other side, how do my actions impact X, Y, or Z, or where can I be making more of a positive impact? How can I have a friendly word or something like this? And again, it's not to deny the need and power of healthy boundaries. There are, and this is why I think it's helpful to look at things from a bacterial perspective, because it becomes less about like this person is this and this behavior is like this. So you can have pathogenic behavior, you can have parasitic behavior, but it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that a person encompasses. You know, sometimes I'm not the nicest person. Every once in a while, right? I know, right? You thought I was a saint. Because I look so sweet and innocent. But of course, like, you know, I'm saying things that, of course, everybody has this experience. And so it's about figuring out where we can put more of that. And it's not just being positive for positive sake. Like, we have to embrace the shadow. We have to confront the trauma, because this is part of our evolution. Part of our evolution is, instead of sweeping those realities under the rug, you know, like they want to do with your complaints in HR, but addressing what these issues are bringing up, even if they're uncomfortable, even if you don't want to deal with them. Because when you deal with them, you can get more underneath, and that allows everybody to heal. And honestly, like, why I'm trying to change the world one gut at a time is because I feel like when people are not worried about focusing on their health and they're sick, and they can only think about themselves, like, what are they going to do for their communities? I just feel like naturally human beings want to participate in a positive way in society, and they want to help each other. They want to collaborate. They want to lift each other up. And these viewpoints really come from trauma and not addressing it. And that's what shuts us down and puts us into these little places of not being able to grow and live our best lives and give more back to everybody, because we all have something to give and to share.
Yep, totally. And I completely agree. You know, it's again with the contrast and the not being wanting to be wrong. And there it's right and wrong. It's like, no, let's just like figure out what happened. Like, let's talk about it, figure out what happened, try to understand each other. Not saying, oh, you're right or you're wrong, but can I see why you would feel that way? Oh, I see why you would feel that way. Not you're right. Oh, I'm wrong. It's I could see how you would feel that way, or I could see how you would see it that way. And then working towards a solution together.
Yes. Well, that's all we're trying to do, right? And I mean, speaking of, one last business of yours I wanted to mention is inclusive pay, right? You are working towards helping businesses that traditionally have a more difficult time being able to take electronic payments and things like that, get access to those services. So, I mean, my reason for bringing it up is just to indicate that you walk your talk. You are trying to create services and products that help people have alternatives and get to different solutions.
Yeah, and especially it's called high risk um, industries. Like
Kombucha is considered high risk.
it was just considered high risk, which is so weird to me, but whatever. I know that it helps people, and I know I'm like, look, dude, let's get these people the ability to get their product that's helping people out into the world. And so we created inclusive pay for that reason for things like CBD. I know a lot of people are like, CBD is legal. Yeah, it's legal, but it's still high risk. I mean, airlines are high risk. So so what we did is we created inclusive pay so that these people wouldn't have to go through hell and high water to get a merchant account, to get a website up, to figure out what's going to work for them. It's like, well, we've done, and the way we came about that one was Kelly had written an article about CBD on her A Girl Worth Saving site. And she was doing like meal plans or something at that time and got her merchant account pulled for writing that article. And it's like, for writing an article, she's not even selling it, right? And they were like, yeah, you can't talk about it. Can't even talk about it on my own site. Yeah, right. And then Kelly's like, there's got to be somebody out there who's doing this. Like, we got to figure this out because this is stupid. And so the quickest way to get us to start a business is to tell us no.
My kind of rebel.
I'm be like, oh, I can't, watch me. I'm going to do it twice now. And so that's how we started it, is we were like, you can't, that's really just crazy. You can't tell somebody what they can and can't say on their own site. Like, that's just dumb. And so we helped hundreds of merchants get merchant accounts. And we've sort of let that business go on autopilot because we have people who can help. Like, we're just like, look, we'll gift you here. They will definitely help you and get all your paperwork together and get you this account. Right. So totally there for those people, because like I said, if I know that I can help you, I will. Just you humans are that way. We really do just want to help. I know that the news and society and every media will tell you that humans are horrible and that they just want to destroy everything, but humans are not that way. We do want to help. And so I think most people, if you say, hey, can you help me? Will say, yeah, how? They're not going to go, no.
Right. No, I think you're right about that. And, you know, it is frustrating to live in a world where censorship, especially about plant medicine, about things from nature, about things that human beings have been using for thousands of years, suddenly becomes a tricky issue because somebody with a financial interest in their patented product, where they've extracted one active ingredient from something in order to make their patented process and then charge you way too much money for it. Like, it just really frustrates me, the amount of censorship we have around herbalism. And I agree, you don't want people just saying, yes, it cures everything, because that is never going to be true. There are no cures, honestly. There are no cures, but there are things that support a healthy immune system, and your body is what does the healing, right?
Our bodies are so smart. Like, so smart. I think that's why I absolutely fell in love with biology, is because as you learn more about how our bodies work, it's just so fascinating. It's like,
Yes.
well, it just does that? Yeah. You gave it what it needed and it just did this. Like, oh my God, it's so cool.
Well, and they're so regenerative, just like this planet. And I think, again, we get fed a story that there's limited, everything's dying, right? And this creates a lot of fear and anxiety. And that anxiety puts you into an immobile situation, when you recognize that, of course, if you give a living organism what it needs to thrive, it will. And, switching to something like Sip Herbals, especially if you're someone who's been on that adrenal fatigue cycle, that can help you thrive. It can give you that ritual, and yet it has all these other great nutrients and minerals. Same with, adding a kombucha or other fermented foods. And, it's just about the whole process of putting all of these things together and experimenting and finding different things, and really getting away from the foodstuffs. Anything that comes to you in a box with a bunch of numbers. I mean, this is what drives me nuts about the reductionism of counting calories, is like, those numbers don't mean anything because you don't understand the nutritional value of what you're putting into your body, the nutrients and where they're coming from, right? The source, consider the source. It's so vital. It's much more important than what the numbers on the box say. And yet we're all driven to read these numbers, and if anything, read the ingredients list, because that's what's going to uncover to you if this is something to put in your body or not. And it's challenging because we don't have systems in place, even though that's supposedly what they're supposed to do, is to protect us from all these chemicals. And yet brands will make products that you can have in Europe without all the chemicals and the weird stuff, and then you're given the toxic stuff here in the US. And it's like, how does a company morally assume that that is something you can do? It makes no sense to me.
And then, you know, when people are so caught up on those numbers, oh, it has this number, this number, this number. It's like, well, your number is different than somebody else's number anyway. So it varies from day to day. So one day I might need more energy calories than, you know, the next day. Maybe as much the next day. Maybe I need more. What is my serving? Twice as much as I need, you know, what your box says. So they don't mean anything. You know, they just don't. It's very arbitrary. Everyone's different. We all need something different every different day. It's good.
Exactly. And sometimes we need to not eat so much. And that's okay too, right? Even this idea that like we have to eat 3 times a day, we have to eat 3 times a day, like why?
Or maybe I'm hungry at midnight. Maybe my body's like, hey, I need something. Okay, fine. You know, our hunger signals are not something to just be, oh, let me tell you how not to be hungry. Why? Your body is telling you it needs something and you're like, let me tell it to shut up.
Right.
Oh.
I know. Okay, I could talk about these kinds of things forever. I don't know that they're interesting to anyone else but you and me, but it's been so lovely having you here today, Orleatha. How can people find you if they want to learn more about all the amazing things you do?
So you can find me right here on Instagram. Orleatha is not a hard person to find. That name is very rare, thankfully. My parents got real creative. So I am right here on Instagram. This is where I spend most of my time. And so if you just look up Orleatha, you can find all of my businesses in my profile bio. You can also drop me a line if you need to. You can hit me at hello@Herbals. I'm there as well too.
Great. Well, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate you. And I didn't ask you about this, but would you want to give away a Sip Herbals pack to some lucky viewer?
Sure will. If anybody, let's see, how will we do it? Oh, share it. How do you want to do it? You want to have them share the video or tag a friend on the video? However you want.
We've been doing lots of giveaways, so we'll get all the details figured out. We'll post that tomorrow for folks who are interested. So if you want to try the Sip Herbals, it's really amazing. I'm loving it. It's so delicious. It's in my cup right here. And I'm really excited to try the other flavors as well. I've had the original, but we'll post so that people can find us, find you.